Now, I'll start with the reading of Jeffrey Archer's Clifton Chronicles. The first volume of Clifton Chronicles is Only Time Will Tell. The cover page looks like there's some symbol hanging over here, and a dog with ships, a man going over there. Uh, it's kind of revolutionary cover page. Jeffrey Archer, The Clifton Chronicles Volume 1, with the title Only Time Will Tell. Macmillan Publications. Alan Quilter, 1927 to 1998. Here comes the family tree of the Barringtons. So Walter Barrington married to Mary Barrington, 1966 from 1874. The children Nicholas and Hugo, 1894 to 1918. Hugo married to Elizabeth Harvey, 1896. Mrs. Harvey born in 1900s. The children Giles, Emma, and Grace, respective birth dates. And then comes the family of the Cliftons. Harold Tancock married Vera Prescott. And the children, five children: Ray, Albert, Stanley, Maisie, Elsie. Maisie married the Clifton, and the child is Harry, born in 1920. The contents: a prelude, 56 chapters. Maisie Clifton, it's 1919. Prelude, it's kind of introduction. The story would never have been written if I hadn't been pregnant, mind you. I had always been planned to lose my virginity on the works out into Western Supermare. Just not to that particular man. Now Clifton was born in Stills House Lane, just like me. We went to the same school, Marywood Elementary, but as I was 2 years younger than him, I didn't know I existed. Yeah. Here, the author is introducing the purpose, the cause of this writing, and he introduces the man named Arthur Clifton. Now the narrator says that he don't actually, they both were in the same school, and even this guy Arthur Clifton don't know who she is, as she being 2 years younger. All the girls in my class had a crush on him, yeah, and not just because he captained the school football team. Here, or just he just he's just describing what the characteristics of the guy. Uh, all the girls in my class had a crush on him. Probably a not kind of playboy, but handsome looking, and just because he captained the school football team and a good sports person also. Although other had never shown any interest in me while I was at school, it changed soon after I had returned from the Western Front. Yeah, as it happens in every guy's life. As they mature, they'll change their perspective on women. I'm not sure he realized who I was. And he asked me for a dance that Saturday night at the Palace, but to be fair, I had to look twice before I recognized him because he's grown a pencil mustache and had his hair slicked back like Ronald Colman. Yeah, in the course of time, his attire changed. So, this woman, did not recognize him as Arthur Clifton. He didn't look at another girl that night, and after we had danced the last waltz, I knew it would be a matter of time before he asked me to marry him. Yeah, he went too fast. But after the moment he danced with the girl, uh, she thought that it would not take uh, much time for him to ask her to marry him. Although held my hand as we walked back home and we reached my front door, he tried to kiss me. Yeah, he's getting intimate to her. Oh, let's see what she do. I turned away. After all, the Reverend Watts had told me often enough that I had to stay pure until the day I was married. And Miss Monday, our choir mistress, warned me that only men wanted one thing, and once they got it, they quickly lost interest. Yeah, this is a vision of every girl that man needs only one thing from women, and after they get it, they will lose interest in it. But quite not true. As according to her vision, she thought in that way. Often wondered if Miss Monday spoke from experience. Yeah, as she being a sorry, as she being a experienced woman, She thought that uh, uh, he might be encountered with such an experience, so he's talking out of his experience. The following Saturday, Odor invited me to Flix to see Lillian Gish in Broken Blossoms, and although I allowed him to put an arm on my shoulder, I still didn't let him kiss me. Yeah, she's looking like so stubborn. He didn't make a fuss. Truth is, although was rather shy. See, what she's telling? Um, Actually, the other was shy, but she's getting intimate on him. Even she's refusing. The next Saturday, I didn't allow him to kiss me, but when he tried to put a hand inside my blouse, I pushed him away. In fact, I didn't let him do that until he had proposed. Bought a ring, and even Max had read the pants a second time. My brother, yeah, he's introducing one more character, Stan, the narrator's brother. Told me that I was the last known virgin on the side of the river Avon, though I suspect most of his conquests were in his mind. Though his brother Stan told him that she was the only virgin at those times in those area, but every woman on she may be thinking that he was trying to tell as if he's her brother. Yeah, she has her suspects in his mind. Still, I decided the time had come and when better the works outing too. Western Superman with the man I was going to marry in a few weeks' time. However, as soon as Arthur and Stan got out of the caravan, they headed straight for the nearest pub. I had spent the past month planning for this moment, so when I got off the coach, like a good girl guide, I was prepared. I was walking towards the pyre, feeling pretty fed up when I became aware someone was following me. Yeah, here comes the suspense part. She was walking towards the pyre, feeling pretty fed up. When I became, uh, she was fed up as and when she came to know that someone uh, was following her. I looked around and was surprised when I saw who it was. He's not revealing who it was. He caught up with me and asked if I was on my own. Yes, she said. Yeah, aware that by now Other would be on his third pint. When he put a hand on my bum, I should have slapped his face. But for several reasons, I didn't. But why so? To start with, I thought about the advantages of having sex with someone I wasn't likely to come across again, and I have to admit I was flattered by what the holy shit she did. Um, she being so stubborn, why did she allow such a guy who was following? He should know. The other did not reveal who he is, but she did allow him to make sex. By the time Other and Stan would have been downing their 8 pins, he'd booked he had booked us into a guest house just off the seafront. They seemed to have a special date for visitors who had no plans to spend the night. He started kissing me even before we had reached the first landing. And once the bedroom door was closed, he quickly undid the buttons of my blouse. It obviously wasn't his first time. In fact, I'm pretty sure I was in the first girl had an works outing. Otherwise, how did he know about the special rates? I must confess, I hadn't expected it to be all over so quickly. Once he had climbed off me, I disappeared into the bathroom while he sat on the end of the bed and lit up a fag. Perhaps it would be better the second time, I thought. But when I came back out, he was nowhere to be seen. I have to admit, I was disappointed. I might have felt more guilty about being unfaithful to the author if I hadn't been sick all over me on the journey back to Bristol. Yeah, the next day I told mom, yeah, here comes another. I told mom what had happened without letting on who the bloke was. After all, she hadn't met him and was never likely to. Mom, never likely to. Mom told me to keep my mouth shut. She didn't want to have to cancel the wedding. And even if I didn't turn out to be pregnant, no one would be any the wiser. And as Arthur and I would be married by the time anyone noticed. Yeah, uh, the um, author still had to reveal who the guy was, who the guy that took her virginity. Yeah, and her mom took a wiser step that not to reveal listening to Arthur Clifton. Yeah, let's step to Harry Clifton, 1920 to 1933. I was told my father was killed in the war. Whenever I questioned my mother about his death, she didn't say any more than that he had served with the Royal Gloucestershire Regiment and had been killed fighting on the Western Front only days before the armistice was signed. Grandma said my dad had been a brave man, and once when we were alone in the house, she showed me his medals. My grandpa rarely offered an opinion on anything, but then he was deaf as a post, so he might not have heard the question in the first place. The only other man I can remember was my uncle Stan. Yeah, Stan was a brother with the narrative of the that that first thing. Okay, yeah. The uncle Stan was where the Maisie Clifton introduced us as her brother. Yeah, his uncle means he is the son of Maisie Clifton, who used to sit at the top of the table at the breakfast time. When he left of a morning, I would often follow him to the city docks where he worked. Yeah, every day I spent at the dockyard was an adventure. Cargo ships from the distant lands and unloading their wares rice, sugar, bananas, jute, and many other things I had never heard of. Once the holds had been emptied, the dockers would load them with salt, apples, tin, even coal. My least favorite because it was an obvious clue to what I had been doing all day and not my mother even. Yeah, this guy, naughty guy, been sleeping out of home and coming to the dockyard and seeing all those uh, loading and unloading things. Before they set off again, too, I knew not where. I always wanted to help my uncle Stan unload whatever ship has docked that morning. But he just laughed, saying, "All in good time, my lad." It couldn't be so enough for me, but without any warnings, school got in the way. Yeah, this is a nightmare of any kid whose life has been wonderful and colorful before they join the school. Yeah, this time has struck this boy too. I was sent to Mary Elementary when I was 6, and I thought it was a complete waste of time. What was the point of school when I could learn all I needed? The dogs. He questioned himself. Why, as every student of nowadays questioned himself, what's the matter with school when I can learn in the one place or the other? According to this guy, yeah, Harry, his the place of learning is at the docks. He's questioning himself. I wouldn't have bothered to go back the following day if my mother hadn't dragged me to the front gates, deposited me, and returned at 4 o'clock that afternoon to take me home. Yeah, his mother was too cautious about this naughty guy. She used to drag him down. She used to drag him to the front gates of the school and picked him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I didn't realize mom had other plans for my future. Why didn't include joining Uncle Stan in the shipyard? Once mom had dropped me off each morning, I would hang around in the yard until she was out of sight, then slope off to the docks. I made sure I was always back at the school gates when she returned to pick me up in the afternoon. Okay, she's like kind of um, uh, he, the time after his mother leaves the school, this guy he just slips off to the dock and correctly by the time the school gets over, he just walks back uh, to the school gates as if as if she is walking out from the school. I made sure I was always back at the school gates when she returned to pick me up in the afternoon. On the way home, I would tell her everything I had done at the school that day. Yeah, I was good at making up stories, but it wasn't so long before she discovered that was all they were stories. Yeah, at last she got him. One or two other boys from my school also used to hang around the dogs. Yeah, not only him, but one or two people like him also hang around the dogs. But I kept distance from them. Why? They were older and bigger. Yeah, and used to thump me if I got in their way. I also had to keep an eye out of Mr. Haskins. Yeah, one more guy, the chief ganger, because if he found me loitering, to use his favorite word, He would send me off with a kick up the backside and threat. If I see you loitering round here again, my lad, I'll report you to the headmaster, he says. Yeah, he's just introducing a name character called Haskins, the chief danger. Hmm, yeah, who is quite uh, strict in kind of rules. Occasionally, Haskins decided he'd seen me once too often and had be reported to the headmaster, who would lather me before sending me back to my classroom. My form master, Mr. Holcomb, never let on if I didn't show up for his class, but then he was a bit soft. Whenever my mum found out I'd been playing Tron, she couldn't hide her anger and would stop my half-penny a week pocket money. But despite the occasional punch from an older boy, regular gatherings from the headmaster, and loss of my pocket money, I still couldn't resist the draw of the dogs. See how passionate this guy is about his passion, his happiness, where he is finding in the dogs. Even after cutting his half a penny a week, he's still going to the dogs for his passion. I met only one real friend while I loitered around the dockyard. His name was Old Jack Tar. Old is an adjective, Jack Tar is a name. My Mr. Tar lived in a abandoned railway carriage at the end of the sheds. Yeah. Where he was in the near dark dogs, this man, the old Jack Tar. Mr. Tar lived in the abandoned railway carriage at the end of sheds. Uncle Stan, this guy, who following whom Mr. Harry went, told me to keep away from old Jack because he was stupid, dirty, old tramp. He didn't look that dirty to me, certainly not as dirty as Stan. And it wasn't long before I discovered he wasn't stupid either. After lunch with my uncle, one bite of his marmite sandwich, his discarded apple core, and swig of beer, I would be back at school in time for a game of football. Yeah, the only activity I considered it worth turning up for. Yeah, there's one more thing that's turn up this Harry is the game of football. After all, when I left school, I was going to captain Bristol City or build a ship. Yeah, he's having two choices to either to go to capital Bristol City or build a ship that would sail around the world. If Mr. Holcomb kept his mouth shut and Ganger didn't report me to the headmaster, I could go for days without being found out, and as long as I ordered the cold bars and was standing by the school gate at 4 o'clock every afternoon, my mother would never be any wiser. Every other Sunday, Uncle Stan would take me to watch Bristol City at the Ashton Gate. On Sunday mornings, Mum used to cart me off to Holy Nativity Church, something I couldn't find a way of getting out of. Yeah, he being a small kid, what will he do when he was taken to kind of church instead of getting out of it? Once the Reverend Watts had given the final blessing, I would run all the way to the recreation ground and join my mates for a game of football before returning home in the time for dinner. Of course, it is every thinking process of a child. As and when they finish their blessings from church father, they'll run out and play games with their mates. By the time I was 7, it was clear to anyone who knew anything about the game of football that I was never going to get into the school team, let alone captain Bristol City. But that was when I discovered that God had given me one small gift, that it wasn't in my feet. To begin with, I didn't notice that anyone who sat near me in church on a Sunday morning stopped singing whenever I opened my mouth. I wouldn't have given it a second thought if Mum hadn't suggested I join the choir. They laughed scornfully. After all, everyone knew the choir was only for girls and sissies. I would have dismissed the idea out of hand if the Reverend Watts hadn't told me that choir boys were paid a penny for funerals and expenses for weddings. My first experience of bribery. Yeah, you too experienced the bribery, that too in the church. But even after I reluctantly agreed to take the vocal test, the devil decided to place an obstacle in my path in the form of Miss Eleanor E. Monday. Yeah, some other character, Miss Eleanor E. Monday. I would never have come across Miss Monday if she hadn't been the choir mistress at the Holy Nativity. Yeah, she is the choir mistress at the Holy Nativity. Although she was only 5 feet 3 and looked as though a gust of wind might blow her away, no one tried to take the Mikey. I have a feeling that even the devil would have been frightened of Miss Monday because the Reverend Watts certainly was. Yeah, the church father, the Reverend Watts itself is frightened of Miss Monday. Why won't the other? When this small kiddo, I agreed to take a vocal test, but not before my mum had handed over a month's pocket money in advance. The following Sunday, I stood in a line with a group of other lads and waiting to be called. You'll always be on time for choir practice, Miss Monday announced, fixing a gimlet eye on me. I stayed back defiantly. You will never speak until I'll speak spoken to. I somehow managed to remain silent, and during the service, we'll concentrate on all the times. I reluctantly nodded, and then, God bless her, she gave me a way out. But most importantly, she declared, placing her hands on his lips. Within 12 weeks, you will be expected to pass a reading and writing test so that I can sure you are able to tackle a new anthem or unfamiliar psalm. I was pleased to have fallen at the first hurdle, but I was to discover Miss Eleanor Eamon didn't give up easily. What piece have you chosen to sing, child? She asked me when I reached the front of the line. I haven't chosen anything, I told her. She opened a hymn book, handed it to me, and sat down at the piano. I smiled at the thought that I might still be able to make the second half a Sunday morning football game. She began to play a familiar tune, and when I saw my mother glaring at me from the front row of pews, I decided better go through with it, just to keep her happy. All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, all things wise and wonderful. A smile had appeared on Miss Monday's face long before I reached the Lord God made them all. What's your name, child? She asked. Harry Clifton. Yes, Harry Clifton. You will report for choir practice on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday at 6 o'clock sharp. Turning to the boy standing behind me, she said, Next. I promised my mom I'd be on time for the first choir practice, even though I knew it would be my last. As Miss Monday would soon realize I couldn't read or write. Yeah, this guy. How do he know to read or write? As if because this guy is bunking all his school classes and heading out to the docks, and it would have been my last. Obviously, anyone listening that my singing voice was in a different class to that of another boy in the choir. In fact, the moment I opened my mouth, everyone fell silent, and the looks of admiration, even awe, that had desperately sought on the football field was happening in the church. Miss Monday pretended not to notice them. Yeah, she knew that they were awful, and she pretended not to notice. After she dismissed her, I didn't go home but ran all the way to the door so I could ask Mr. Tar what I should do about the fact that I couldn't read or write. I listened carefully to the old man's advice, and the next day I went back to the school and took my place, Mr. Holcomb's class. The schoolmaster couldn't hide his surprise when he saw me sitting in the first row, yeah, and was even more surprised when I paid close attention to the morning lesson for the first time. Yeah, how would a teacher? Why would mm, he would not be turned off by seeing last bench students sitting over in the first bench and paying close attention to his classes, as if she would not miss one word what he teaches. Miss Halcombe began by teaching me the alphabet, and within days I could write out all 26 letters, if not always in the correct order. My mom would have helped me when I got home in the afternoon, but like the rest of my family, she always couldn't read or write. Oh, holy. Uncle Stan could just about to scroll his signature. Even the Uncle Stan, he would just scroll his signature, not properly. And although he could tell the difference between a packet of Will's Star and Wild Woodbines, I was fairly sure he couldn't actually read the labels. Yeah, despite his unhelpful murderings, I set about writing the alphabet on any piece of scrap paper I could find. Uncle Stan didn't seem to notice that the torn up newspaper in the privy was always covered in letters Once I had mastered an alphabets, Mr. Holcomb introduced me to few simple words like dog, cat, mum, and dad. That was when I first asked him about my dad. Yeah, hoping that he might be able to tell me something about him. After all, he seemed to know everything, but he seemed puzzled. Yeah, and I knew so little about my own dad. A week later, he wrote my first four-letter word on blackboard. Book and then five. Book and then five. House and six. School. By the end of the month, I could write my first sentence. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, famous statement, which Mr. Holcomb pointed out contained every letter in the alphabet. I checked and he turned out to be right. By the end of the term, I could spell anthem, psalm, and even hymn. Although Mr. Holcomb kept reminding me, I still dropped my H's whenever I spoke. But then when we began, we broke up for the holidays, and I began to worry I would never pass Miss Monday's demanding test without Mr. Holcomb's help. And that might have been the case if old Jack hadn't taken his place. I was half an hour early for the choir practice on the Friday evening, and I knew I would have to pass my second test if I hoped to continue as a member of the choir. Yeah, he's so enthusiastic because he will be paid a penny. I sat silently in the stalls, hoping Miss Monday would pick on someone else before she called on me. I had already passed the first test, with what Miss Monday has described as flying colors. We had all been asked to recite the Lord's Prayer. This was not a problem for me, because as long as I could remember, my mum knelt by my bed each night and repeated the familiar words before tucking me. However, Miss Monday's next test was to prove far more demanding. By this time, the end of our second month, we were expected to read a psalm out loud from the rest of the choir. I chose Psalm 121, which I also knew of by heart, having sung it so often in the past. I will lift up mine eyes up to the hills, from whence cometh my help. Although I couldn't sing it, I could only hope that my help comes from the Lord. Although I was able to turn to the correct page in the Psalm book, as I could now, as I could now count from 1 to 100, I feared Miss Monday would realize that I was unable to follow every verse line by line. If she did, she didn't let on because I remained in the quiet stalls for another month while two other miscreants her word. Not that I knew what it meant until I asked Mr. Halcombe the next day. We were dispatched back to the congregation. When the time came for me to the third and the final test, I was ready for it. Miss Monday asked those of us who remained to write out the Ten Commandments in the correct order without referring to the book of Exodus. The choir mistress turned a blind eye to the fact that I placed a theft ahead of murder, could inspect adultery. That I didn't know what is meant. Only after two other miscreants were summarily dismissed for lesser offences did I realize just how exceptional my voice must be. The first Sunday of Advent, Miss Monday announced that she had selected three new trebles, or little angels, as the Reverend Watts wanted to describe us to join her choir. The remainder have been rejected for committing such unforgivable sins as chattering during the sermon, sucking a gobstopper on. In the case of two boys being caught playing conquers during the Nangdemites, the following Sunday I dressed up in a long blue cassock with a ruffled white collar. Alone was allowed to wear a bronze medallion of the Virgin Mother around my neck to show that I had been selected as a treble soloist. I would have proudly worn the medallion all the way back home. Into the school next morning to show off to the rest of the lads if only Miss Monday hadn't retrieved it at the end of each service. On Sundays, I was transported into another world, but I feared this state of delirium could not last forever. Yeah, let's stop it over here and continue in the next video.